Lord. Okay, we are live. Welcome everyone to the Bitcoin Olympics Hackathon. I'm Albert, CEO of Bitcoin Startup Lab. I'm here joined by Charlie and Cypher. We're both instrumental in spearheading the Ordinals movement. They're here to share some really cool stuff with everyone today for the hackathon. Hopefully inspire some of you to build some really awesome stuff around this space. But before we get into that, I'd like to welcome the audience to the Bitcoin Olympics Hackathon. This is a Bitcoin ecosystem-wide hackathon where multiple Bitcoin communities, protocols, and champions have come together to support, reward, and celebrate the innovative spirit of founders and builders on Bitcoin to create valuable use cases for a sustainable Bitcoin economy. Our show is brought to you by Bitcoin Startup Lab, a top pre-accelerator in the Bitcoin space. We help you turn your ideas into investment-worthy startups on Bitcoin. Also, big shout out to our media partners, BTC Inc., parent company of Bitcoin Magazine, the top media on Bitcoin, and CryptoSlate, a crypto-agnostic media platform that brings the latest happenings on Bitcoin to the rest of the crypto world. And a big thank you to all of our teams and all the guest speakers that have come together to make the Bitcoin Olympics Hackathon possible and accelerate the advent of the Bitcoin economy. So with that said, welcome Cypher, welcome Charlie. How are you guys doing today?
Excellent. Just getting this morning started with my terrific lighting I got in this room, evidently.
Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful. Thanks.
Same. I'm doing great. Cy and I, we work in Bitcoin and crypto, so our daily schedule is a little bit different than normal. So we tend to work late nights and late mornings. So this is the first meeting of the day for some of us.
But yeah, thanks for making it early for the Bitcoin Olympics Hackathon. You guys are doing a good deed right now. We have, I think we have almost 200 signups, right? We're going for over 1,000 this time, and it's the prize sponsor has been very generous, right? So over $100,000 in prizes now, and again, like our prizes. Let me just take 1 second here. The prizes that are 100% undiluted, meaning that our platform takes zero operating and zero marketing fees. So whoever wins, the 100% of those prizes go to the winners directly from the prize sponsor over to the winners. So what we do ask is that because we spend zero fees on marketing, if you guys join the hackathon, do a retweet, do a repost, right? And meet some like-minded people and build some innovative stuff, right? So today's Cypher, you're going to, if I understand, we're going to talk about what the possibilities are, maybe some of the wish lists, right? Or what could be built on Ordinals. And I'm sure we're going to touch on the art a little bit, but we want to go beyond the art this time, right? If we think about Ordinals as an immutable database, or another way that you share with us how you think about it, what are some of the other possibilities with thinking about Ordinals this way, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I thought that was a question already.
It was a question, yeah.
All right. Yeah, Ordinals are both an immutable database, a data storage mechanism, a data delivery mechanism, depending on how you view the blockchain itself. If you think it should be on every device, then they are a data surety system. All of these come together to make a really good place to store a surprising amount of different data, or even store things that we would have used op return for in the past. Because op return's fantastic, but op return's 80 bytes. If you needed to store multiple hashes to, say, prove existence of a piece of data at a certain point in time, you would need multiple op returns, or you could generate one nice clean report, in HTML, inscribe that, and have that take up, slightly more space, but also be able to be a single transaction.
Super. So how do you want to move forward? Should we jump into the wish list items, or did you have another idea?
Oh, I'm happy to discuss things I think are awesome that people are building within the limitations of NDAs and what you're allowed to talk about.
Yeah.
I'll jump in and ask a follow-up question for Albert here to you, Sai, and that's about when you talk about Bitcoin as a kind of data delivery, data storage mechanism. Could you elaborate on that further? How does Bitcoin's block space differentiate from block space on other blockchains? Like, what makes it different? I use the term pristine, but like, it has different characteristics, different strengths, and maybe some other trade-offs than other blockchains.
So first of all, that gets into questions like proof of work versus proof of stake. Proof of stake is fantastic for a fast distributed ledger where you expect to have trustfulness as a primary component, or you trust the operating parties with your financial data and all your other data, and you're totally fine if something were to happen because you trust them that much. Bitcoin's primary thing being proof of work, you should be doing either proving things yourself, meaning that the majority of us run Bitcoin full nodes where we have a full copy of the blockchain. If everyone else stops interacting with Bitcoin tomorrow, I don't lose any data I've ever stored on Bitcoin. It'll be across multiple nodes that I control still. They'll still be, they'll still be mining technically. We won't reach the next difficulty adjustment with just me mining, but we'll still be clicking along. So there's that. It's not inherently that much different than a few other options. There are other systems that are almost identical. It's that it's been around the longest. With Ethereum changing their method from proof of work to proof of stake, they've effectively reset their timeline for how long they've been an active blockchain.
That's a good take. I like that.
Well, in that, if you're looking for data surety or a reliability metric, the switch is irrelevant. That's a discussion that can happen separately. But seeing something click along for 13 plus years is a pretty good sign that it's going to continue to be reliable. Bitcoin's had better uptime than Google Cloud Services for the last 13 years. And Google Cloud Services is considered reliable enough for multiple large, members of the industry to use it. So I'd call that a pretty good uptime.
Excellent. No, absolutely. It's very dependable. It's very dependable. It's just like time reveals all truths, as they say, right? Time reveals all truths. And so if we imagine there's this ability to use Bitcoin through ordinals as this programmable immutable database, what are some of the applications or categories? Maybe we don't have to get into specifics, but what are some of the other categories aside from just art or collectibles that you'd like to see some people in the hackathon or even at the startup lab to start experimenting with? And I know there's a lot of talk about this, but can you shed some light on why people are so excited about going beyond the art?
Yeah, I mean, the art is amazing, of course. Like, everybody's having a blast with that. It was a really good carrot to bring a lot of mind share back to Bitcoin, who are excited to build cool stuff. But then you start to look at these other things that you can build, whether that's, having the ability to store a chunk of data would enable you to do things like build a smart contract layer 2 with a data storage layer using the data storage layer of Bitcoin. This can be designed as rollups. I believe Rollkit was the first one to do this, where they actually tacked a EVM layer 2 on top of inscriptions on top of Bitcoin. This is sacrilege as far as I'm concerned, but it's also really, really cool because these layer 2s aren't meant to be a replacement for Bitcoin. They're meant to be, at this point, we've always said in Bitcoin, all of these are test nets. All these experiments are test nets.
Mm-hmm.
Ethereum is the best test net that's ever existed. It validated both market share. It validated a desire for these ideas, even if it wasn't delivering on all of them. And that alone is really powerful. It validated the need for some form of these data storage and programmability layers, which is why we now see things like covenants being talked about, because they do add a little bit more programmability to Bitcoin. It's got to be done with care, but it should be good. But inscriptions are purely at this point a data storage mechanism, so they can be used for anything you'd want to build that requires you to store additional data on Bitcoin. So we have people like Ragnar executing on naming services, and one of the better ways I've seen now, I believe Danny was also now experimenting with a direct SAT naming service, replacements for DNS, effectively utilizing Bitcoin as their base layer. This has obvious challenges, but it also would mean that you could potentially have a distributed internet with a distributed naming system, as opposed to the centralized registrar system we work with now.
I'll jump in and ask a follow-up question to that, because I think this is really interesting, especially for the target audience here of the hackathon and the builders. So one of my favorite kind of ideas and terms that people have been throwing around lately is this idea of a Bitcoin internet. And we talked about this early on in February in the Ordinals Discord, the Ordicord, and talking about how you could link inscriptions together and really access Bitcoin's data layer. But we were also talking about, when Casey has this naming scheme or nomenclature for Satoshis of deriving strings in text out of them. We're like, oh, this is cool. It's actually like a DNS system. Could you elaborate further on this? The limitations of the existing DNS system as Danny has it, but then also what it might be used for, what's interesting about it, because it's kind of cool, because we've not seen this kind of thing native to Bitcoin, as far as I'm aware, in a while.
Sure. So I will be cautious about talking about what Danny's building too much, because obviously I don't have firsthand experience in his code base or his structure. With that said, I can kind of talk about the limitations that caused me not to build this in February and March. Why I only got as far as building a relay for these names. And to kind of, when I say names, so Ordinals.
Are you talking about like BTC domain names, or what kind of, or just any
like
kind
the
of
SAT names, like when a SAT has a name like cypherpunk or something. So when you take the raw notation and you convert that raw notation to base 26, you get a SAT name, and sometimes it's a bunch of random letters, but like that acts as kind of a native DNS system to Bitcoin, which is cool. And I think there can be a lot built on it. I think I'd love to see people hack on this idea. So I'm kind of like throw it back to side to say, so what are some limitations or potentials around this?
Yeah, so there were some limitations at the time in that we weren't actively pursuing reinscription as a possibility, and a couple other factors like that would help you with the building of a name service. Because if I can say this SAT, which is assigned this number in standard ordinal theory, is now converted to base 26, I now get a human readable name. Well, I get a mix of letters that could be a human readable name, or it might just be a jumble of letters, points to this website. This was the idea in February, March. I built a simple proof of concept. I believe it's still up. I haven't maintained it at all. So if it's not, let me know and you can have the code base and do it yourself. It's, if you type pretty much anything.ordrelay.com, it will redirect you to ordinals.com on that specific SAT. So like sci4.ordrelay.com is actually a redirect for that subdomain in this original scheme. The problem with this is you end up with the ability to do static redirects, or you move the ledger of these mappings off chain. Neither of these are good solutions. Danny's solution would be inscribing directly to these sats, is my understanding, which gives you the advantage that your mapping is now on chain. It does require you to have an index of these sats though. So you get a lot of these old technologies being rebuilt closer to Bitcoin. And a lot of this is, everybody realizes Bitcoin block space is limited. eventually we will reach an upper bound of how much data we can shove on there and still be anywhere approximating financially reasonable. Like we're 8 to 10 sats per VBR right now. That's not a problem. Lots of transactions still that want to pay that. But we're not at hundreds of sats per VByte. Like we absolutely could be on Bitcoin. And if that happens, then you'll start to see these technologies that need to store data on the base layer to then operate on it at an external layer. These meta protocols, layer 2s, whatever you want to call them, they'll take many forms. Or even just simply enabling user controlled deviations from the standard privacy policy of Bitcoin. Because the goal should be privacy. Your goal should be to be largely unidentifiable. You should be using separate addresses. But there are cases where having identity is a useful characteristic. All sats act as identifiers, decentralized identifiers. And as such, you could build an identity system on top of it that doesn't de-anonymize people, but does allow creating strong linkings of this set of signatures is related to this individual. And that individual doesn't need to be connected to, a meat space in our nice fleshy suits. So you get the opportunity to, really granularly adjust how much privacy you need for each specific application. So those are kind of two large examples: is the ability to create identity systems, the ability to build naming systems, the ability to build fully decentralized apps. So I mean, we say dApps. We've been saying this for years. I'm not a huge fan of that. It just doesn't come across well to me. But if you wanted to build a dApp right now, you typically go to a cloud storage provider. We'll take the Ethereum example first, and you pay them monthly to host your data on their servers, and that data then interacts with a wallet in the browser. But realistically, nothing about your app is inherently decentralized. Like we say decentralized app, but your app is actually running off of a centralized cloud computing platform. And that's great. Maybe you deployed a contract on Ethereum, help you decentralize a little bit, but the contract's only ever called from your centralized platform.
It's not technically decentralized. Yeah,
exactly. Whereas inscriptions, if you want, you could store that web page, assuming it meets the requirements and doesn't require too many outbound resources that aren't available, on the blockchain itself. Now, assuming there is a provable mechanism to show that transaction exists within the Bitcoin blockchain, you can now distribute that data in whatever medium you choose. Optimally, the person would be sourcing it from their own on-disk chain copy of the chain.
Yeah. And
that dApp is now decentralized in that data exists on tens of thousands, potentially more, hundreds of thousands. I mean, I'm not sure of the exact number of Bitcoin core nodes, or Bitcoin protocol enabled nodes.
Right. So we have a few minutes left on this topic. There's two other things I want to cover. One is when we add recursion to it, what are some of the more interesting things that pop to mind that you want people to experiment with? Because we already have, like you said, like unique naming, like unique identifying services, right? Also, unique naming services. These are all great, right? Or anything that wants to use a decentralized database, right? So these are all, one way to find inspiration with these guys is just to see what Ethereum did, right? But at the same time, I think is an important point what you just pointed out, that a lot of those dApps are not really dApps. So there's also a lot of room to just rethink how things should be done or could be done, right? With this new technology existing on Bitcoin now. So one is what are some of the more interesting ideas that you would want to see people experiment with or bring to life around recursions? And the second question I'll get to in a second is a little controversial, but we'll get to that in a second after you talk about recursion.
Yeah, so recursion's really cool. Currently it is used for basically allowing you to have multiple assets files tied together in, say, an HTML page or a SVG file. These are the two primary file types that support these sort of links. Realistically, all recursion is a loosening of the sandbox around the display of inscriptions, meaning that this is something that a lot of people may not realize. When we say recursion, this is not a change to the meta protocol. This is not anything like that. It's simply that the primary explorer, ordinals.com, has established the precedent that we will open up the sandbox to allow outbound links to these specific endpoints. Those being /content, for which contains all the content of all other inscriptions. You can access those from within your HTML or SVG JavaScript. You can access the block height, which is the current block that we are on, its number, so 800,000 something right now. You can access the block time. This is the last Unix timestamp that was seen by the Bitcoin blockchain. The blocks have a time stamp, which is just what time the miner claims it was mined at. It's important to note these are not guaranteed to be accurate, but they are guaranteed to be within a rough time frame of each other. The blockchain is not going to accept if you go back in time and say that you mined this block in 1990, but it doesn't really care about the precision of these. These are more of an aggregate metric that can then be averaged to find the real approximate time. And you can get I think there's two other pieces of data. I can't remember what they are. I think one of them's
You can get like SAT information, and you can get I forget what else, but yeah, we could go look at like the endpoints that
but yeah,
that,
they're just more data exposed. The type of recursion that's more useful for builders right now that very few are looking at is the ability to link to these bits of data and treat them as a chain of data. So let's imagine that I'm building a service where I want to conclusively say that a log was updated and be able to prove if the contents of a given log match what was given at that time. Say I've got an audit log for a secure facility. I could inscribe the hash of an empty log. Then the next time I could inscribe that inscription ID plus the hash of the updated log. I've had a couple of visitors in and out. And by repeating this pattern of inscribing the previous inscription's ID plus the new hash, I now have the ability to, if I also have the corresponding logbooks, say, okay, here's what the logbook says this should be at this point in time. If I hash this and it doesn't match, I know that it did exist as that at that point in time on the blockchain. Now I would know that my logs have been tampered with without needing to worry about the chance that data has been tampered with in the hash as well. Unless you're in a situation where you think your attacker is sophisticated enough to attack Bitcoin itself, in which case you probably can't really solve that problem with any sort of reasonable security measures.
So for the hackers out there, Cypher just outlaid the design for a product which I think is really, really cool, which is, imagine you inscribe and create a DApp in Bitcoin's block space to run natively from a node. And then that DApp, the purpose is to track hashing and timestamps of a log of, say, a secure facility of some kind. This is a real use case for Bitcoin's block space beyond that of just JPEGs. So it's like for the builders out there who are looking at like, what do I build? What do I hack? This is one of those things which breaks out of the JPEG mode and says, there's real interesting things we can do with this. So
yeah, that is super interesting. And so I'm asking like I guess this might be a basic question, but I'm sure some people are thinking about it. So we could store a bunch of different stuff on as an inscription, right? Like what are the, like how far can it go? I mean, can we store a smart contract on it and then could it run?
Yeah. I'll give the Ethereum answer, Ethereum aligned individual answer first, and then I'll give my really cool opinion on where this could go. I notice I am biased as a cypherpunk and an idealist when it comes to tech. I've always got these goofy ideas of where I want things to be. The Ethereum answer is, yeah, an Ethereum smart contract, an EVM smart contract is just a bunch of binary data at the end of the day. So you could throw that binary data on Bitcoin, store it there. Then you need to build an execution layer, a third-party piece of software that reads the Bitcoin blockchain, finds those contracts, executes them, and maintains their state in memory or on disk.
So there's all described.
Say again?
When we say third party, like, is that outside of the inscription, or is another column?
You would want to build it as probably an indexer or explorer of ordinals, but you could, in theory, inscribe, if you could fit it within the size constraints, software that would perform these EVM-like functions, and then potentially use, say, local storage in your browser for your state storage. Means that it's not a shared state unless you're inscribing state as well, but it could have potential practical applications like that. Alternately, let's imagine you have really small pieces of software that you would want to run in a cloud computing environment. Now, this is the me version of this answer. What data can you store there that just can be used to execute stuff, right? Let's imagine you have very small programs that fit in under 400 kilobytes, and you want to execute them in a cloud environment. You could create a third-party application that reads the Bitcoin blockchain, so it's from Bitcoin's data storage layer, and executes these in a containerized environment. So a Docker Compose script, for instance, that would spin up a database, pull in code from the blockchain, compile that code, and execute it in your local environment as a Docker container.
Well, it's just like that one mechanism. There's like a myriad of things that people can imagine up, right?
Exactly. There's
that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, the operating space is far bigger than any one person could imagine. So that's kind of why I try to remain vague, because I would hate to have somebody listening think, oh, this is all this does. No, like I'm just some random developer. I guarantee you there are people building things that even I wouldn't even begin to imagine out there.
Yeah, but this is a great start though, right? And I'm sure the audience does appreciate you not like getting too much into specifics. It's better to leave a little bit vague, because again, this hackathon is about originality, right? And these talks are more for inspiration. And so like anything you guys said combined with an individual's experience is gonna come out a different way, right? And we're looking forward to those projects. But so here's a controversial question. I think is a perfect segue into mining. But before we get into mining, what's all this talk on the internet about ordinals being dead? Because like, let me see if I have my facts straight. So I recently checked the inscription. Is it around 25 million now?
Yeah, that sounds ballpark correct.
Yeah, about that.
I could have sworn I thought we passed 21 million, right? Like 21, the big number on Bitcoin, like less than a month ago. So like in about a month, it's like 4 million inscriptions, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so my point is like, how from when Casey announced it on January 20th, right? From first inscription to 4 million, how many months did that take originally? It must have taken like a few months, right? But now
it was 2 weeks from or on mainnet to hit like 10,000, and there was like another month or so. It was like 2 months to hit 1 million. But basically, BRC20s then kind of dominated the network. So I almost sometimes I'd like to say I think it might be productive to differentiate between non-BRC20 inscriptions and BRC20 inscriptions. Just
so out of the 25 million, some of those are BRC20s.
Yeah. I mean, the entire, it's 22 million of the 25 million are basically BRC20s.
Wow. Okay. So there's a massive acceleration though. I mean, it seems like the rate of inscriptions like this last 1 month was much faster than, say 3 months or 5 months ago.
Yeah, I could probably hop in and comment here. So inscription activity by raw number of inscriptions has actually been pretty flat the past month and a half.
Okay.
Where it's 80 to 120,000 per day, which is more than was in almost the first month of since Casey launched ordinals. And
So before it was like
yeah,
it took 1 month to get to 100,000, but now it's like one day it's 80 to 100,000.
pretty much. Now, I mean, but there's a bunch of different factors here. Like I was commenting on this a little bit a little bit frustrated on this narrative because there's various ways we can evaluate like how Bitcoin is being used. One is by raw value being transferred with the network, and that is considerably high. It's one of the most efficient networks. I would say the most efficient network at and secure network of transferring large amounts of just value. And but then you can also look at just number of transactions on Bitcoin. And one of the kind of hot takes was this past week was, yeah, ordinals are down bad, ordinals are dead. But if we simply look at just activity in terms of transactions on Bitcoin, it's been dominated by people inscribing. And I know my particular hot take on this was, I think that this is very important and probably should be a real come to Jesus moment for people who say Bitcoin can only be used these ways, because it certainly is not just being used these ways. In fact, Bitcoin is empirically discovering other things that it does that people want to use it for. And I think we can't throw this out. This is a real use for this network. And I think I would love to see the primary use of Bitcoin be beyond that of BRC20s or kind of this goofy fungible token scheme on Bitcoin. But the reality is, like, if ordinals are dead, then I would say other Bitcoin use cases are also equally down bad, if not more so, at least currently. I don't think it'll stay that way, but I think it's really important to point out that this is not the only thing that shit the bed this past month.
Right. So now that we're coming into this mining and Bitcoin part of the segment, right? That you're going to be talking about, Charlie. We're sorry for mention, right? We're talking about inscriptions, right? Generating fees. What is it? What, like 8-10 sats per byte right now? What does it have to get to per byte in order for, like, let's say there's no more emissions, right? Like let's look in the future. There's no more emissions for mining. And what like how high does a transaction fee per set have to be in order for miners to say, hey, this is still worth it?
Well, like the Bitcoin Zen, the miner response would be, it is whatever it is. That's kind of that's really the catch-all response to say Bitcoin's natural incentives will mean that the fees will be as high as they need to be, and that hash rate will normalize, and the incentive of the network will be that people like me are always turning on and deploying hash rate in accordance to the various efficiency curves that we mine on. Personally, I think we should be aggressively thinking of ways to drive more activity and more fee activity on Bitcoin. I think this is an urgent topic. I am talking my own bag here because I'm a miner. I look to the inevitable transition to a fee-based mining model. So, whether that's within the next decade or two, I think it has to be certainly within my lifetime. So I am very interested in new ideas on Bitcoin that drive activity. I want more people to use Bitcoin. I want more people to DCA. I want people to spend and replace. But I also want more people to inscribe, because I think this helps discover new use cases for Bitcoin. And I think the rule set should be if you pay a fee to get in a block, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It matters that you're broadcasting and creating transactions within Bitcoin's consensus. The reality is we are, only a few thousand blocks away from the next halving event, ETA next like April. And that's where the price of Bitcoin, the block subsidy goes down from 6.25 per block to 3.125, whatever. And immediately overnight, over block, I like to say, Bitcoin mining revenues are cut in half. And if ceteris paribus, if Bitcoin were to stay the same price it is today and the current fees per block were to stay the same, the majority of the hash rate currently on the network today would be unprofitable. The majority of the public companies who are mining Bitcoin in the US would be mining at a loss, a real loss. And this has happened before. I mean, this is a perennial thing that happens in Bitcoin for the halving. This is a natural event. It strengthens the network, forces everything to get more efficient. But I also like to say, I think, I'm a Bitcoin bull, so I think Bitcoin price will be higher then, but you can't guarantee this. So those of us, it's a bit of a cart or horse or chicken and egg problem of, is Bitcoin naturally going to just skyrocket in value, or is there some kind of active role that we as participants play in helping drive that value discovery? I think both. I'm in the world of Bitcoin mining and specifically block production with Luxor, and we want to actively explore innovative ways for blocks to look and be constructed. I think there's a lot of efficiency to be discovered, and a lot of other additional fee drivers to be discovered, of which inscriptions are just one. So that's kind of my long take on that.
Well, it's definitely good. I think it's also a good time to point out that we have $50,000 in Bitcoin tech agnostic prizes at this hackathon put up by Sora Ventures. That means that if you build something with ordinals, doing something with inscriptions, or doing something with, like, say, that has to with mining or whatever, then you guys can also activate those agnostic prizes, as long as it's creating value on top of Bitcoin. Those agnostic prizes are eligible to you. Okay, so yeah, if you guys want to sign up, just hit the icon here, right? If you're in the Twitter Spaces, it's at BTC Startup Lab, and you can sign up. You go to our Discord. You could replay this video, as well as there's a ton of other documentation to help you guys get started. So on the topic of use cases, right? It's really about, creating more use cases, leveraging a Bitcoin and generating transaction fees, right? What do you think are some of those low hanging fruit that people should be thinking about before next Bitcoin halving? Because I mean, we're like if Ethereum is on level 100 in terms of like the richness of decentralized dApps running on top of Ethereum network, Bitcoin is like sort of at like around 0.5 right now, right? So there's a lot of infrastructure, or a lot of like basic stuff that needs to be built in order for things to really start to grow fast, right? So what are some of those things that, in preparation for, like, say, like a fully robust or fully self-sufficient Bitcoin ecosystem, what are some of the things that should be built now? I think there's around 200 days to the next Bitcoin halving, right? So it's coming down to the wire.
Yeah, I'll let Cypher probably has good insight here too. I'll take a little bit different direction, I think, than you expected, which is most of the audience, I think, for this type of hackathon is going to be saying, what can I build in the world of ordinals? I think there's an abundance of things you can do, but I'll say, if you want to hack on Bitcoin, there's a lot of interesting shit going on coming from the, I would say, traditional hardcore Bitcoiner camp. And I think there's a lot of interesting things you can do to leverage these new ideas. There is a conversation about Bitcoin's scripting language, and specifically using Bitcoin's opcodes as ways to like add more complexity and dynamism to how Bitcoin transactions and are timed and custodied. And I think simple changes or simple evolutions in the scripting language can produce some really interesting techniques. There's I'm just going to list off a couple ideas. There's Frost, which is a new multi-sig mechanism, which adds a lot of really cool things you can build on top of it. So if you are a hacker and you've been hacking on ETH for a while and now you're on Bitcoin, you're like, I don't even know where to start with Bitcoin. Maybe you've been doing ordinal stuff. I would go look and start following accounts such as Rob Hamilton or Rindale to think about the novel approaches and novel evolutions in Bitcoin scripting. This will be a little bit of a friendly debate about which way we should take these, but you can do some really cool shit. Miniscript in particular, Rob has been a great advocate and kind of educator for. Other multi-sig solutions, I think the Lightning Network is about to.
Let me just jump in there. On
yeah.
that about Miniscript and Rob did a segment yesterday on Miniscript. So if you guys want to
go back and listen to that.
Yeah,
go back and listen to that, because I think that's a huge design space for builders to explore. And I know a lot of hackers like to, they like to just learn about something new and then build something with that. And this would be one of those things where like, this is a giant design space where you can start doing cool stuff. And it's a layer of Bitcoin that's not arbitrary. This is inside Bitcoin's like native, this is like within Bitcoin core and Bitcoin's transaction layer. So like, it's not like ordinals, which is kind of an opt-in consensus. This actually is Bitcoin. So whatever you build using these ideas can be adopted by everybody, not just those of us who love ordinals. So I would also look at, I was talking about how Lightning, I think, is going to go through very interesting kind of leveling up, because Lightning just took forever to get some of the basic shit together and to make it even usable for a lot of people. But it's like now approaching this point where normal people can use it. It's more lightweight, and so users, now you have an abundance of like what I would call the NFT culture moving to Bitcoin now, and they want to use Bitcoin. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for a new type of Lightning user to come in, and they want to do things with Lightning's with the Lightning layer that they've not been able to do on Bitcoin before. And so that, coupled with I think companies like Voltage and innovations like Bolt 12 or 11, I forget. But basically, like it kind of upgrades the functionality of Lightning and Lightning channels. And I think I think people should be looking at that because Lightning gets its own like design space, and it's a different side of the brain. But I would strongly recommend people start looking at that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Speaking of Lightning, tomorrow we have a Lightning crash course from Lightning Labs. They're going to be, in addition to Lightning, they're going to be unveiling their Taproot assets, which you can develop now on testnet. So
yeah, I like to say, look, BRC20 is fun, and I'm a well-known critic of it, but it's fun and people want to use it. I think, and Domo himself said this at the top of the BRC20 paper or Git book, is that Taproot assets, TAPS, specifically makes more sense for fungible tokens. So if you're thinking like, how do I build upon this very clear demand, as much as the folks behind Taproot assets probably don't like love this idea, I think it would be incredibly popular. And I think it would just drive a ton of people using this stuff and building on it. So I think that's a very attractive place to build.
Excellent, excellent. So we have about 10 minutes left here, guys. How about does anybody, oh, here we go. We have some requested questions here. This is Savtoshi. Do you have a question, Savtoshi? If you do, you can ask.
Oh yeah, Savtoshi is a great Bitcoin builder. Runs a really cool Bitcoin Minecraft server.
Cool. Hand raised. Satoshi, go ahead and ask your question here. We got a few minutes. Like how do I look at all right, so you can there we go.
There we go. I was muted by host.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, I was I just came across this. I don't know what the right words are. I don't want to restrict ordinals, but I'm not pro ordinal. That being said, I am building on Lightning. I am not yet profitable. I'm definitely in the startup mode. I was wondering I just came across this because CB Spheres is one of the people that has been supporting me. And I'm curious what the scope and scale is of this hackathon for someone like myself who's building on Lightning. Is that still applicable? Is it a little bit more for that grassroots? I was seeing here on the website that the code must be open source. Is that true? Yeah. If you can just, I'm sorry if this has all been kind of said before, or
Yeah, no, yeah, the website probably needs to be up. It doesn't have to be open source, but you do have to submit a GitHub, right? And then allow judges to take a look at it. So I mean, like, it doesn't have to be open source, but it will be privy to some people for the judging.
Yeah.
Now, but I think that the more important thing here is that it has to be original code. Like, of course, you could use APIs and other existing things to hack something together, but your use case, it has to be solving a real user problem, and then you must have some kind of novel or original twist to it, right? So it
sounds good.
Yeah, there's definitely big points for originality here. So
having followed Satoshi for a while and love what he's building, I think this would be a great opportunity. I think a lot of money raised has been kind of because of ordinals, but it doesn't necessarily have to be deployed into ordinals. I think a lot of this capital is now looking for just new ideas on Bitcoin. I think I think Lightning is a very attractive investment for a lot of this. And so I think, cool Lightning shit, very applicable to this hackathon. I also don't speak for the hackathon, but I do, I kind of know all the players here, and I think you could build some really cool stuff.
Yeah, Charlie's right, because although Lightning didn't have time to put up a prize pool this time, but we have a catch-all. The $50,000 agnostic prize pool is eligible for, I mean, anyone who, as long as it's some kind of application on Bitcoin, then you can go for that prize pool. So there's also rewards there. I just have to emphasize, like, you have to build something like new, right? Because we only accept code between August 26th to October 1st, just to keep it fair. So it's fine that you're building your startup. The startup is probably more suitable for our Bitcoin Startup Lab, which is our main 3-month program. The Bitcoin Olympics Hackathon is more like a cultural thing where we invite a bunch of awesome people like Charlie and Cypher and other protocol side chains, et cetera, to come together and just encourage people to learn more about Bitcoin, different technologies, and perhaps maybe create new innovations during this 5-week period. Yeah. So thanks for your questions, Satoshi. Looking forward to it. Have you signed up?
I will be. I didn't share my code publicly, but the only reason for not sharing it yet is because I have certain ideals when it comes to Bitcoin. I want to see it be the base layer monetary network, and I feel like the way that some people are presenting Bitcoin in video games and whatnot actually detracts from that. So I don't want to be overwhelmed. I want my code to kind of be used against me, right? So I want to wait till I'm large enough. So it's like, okay, I have a space, like things are running well. Now I'll open source because I'm not threatened by someone else undoing what I'm trying to do with my own code.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds like, well, I think there's two different things, because the code that you've already created is not like, you can't use that for the hackathon. So you could just keep that secret. If you want to come to the hackathon, you can build something else, right? That maybe you want to experiment with, and if you want to participate in the prize part. But of course, like, you can always join the Bitcoin Olympics Hackathon just to come to the server and meet a bunch of people, right? That's totally cool too. You don't necessarily have to like turn in code. And like, I think half the experience is more about meeting people and checking out the information, right? Seeing what people from Lightning or other protocols or networks have to say. about their wish list. There's going to be a lot of wish list videos. So I think it's like you don't necessarily have to turn something in either to enjoy the hackathon. Awesome. Okay, so looks like we're coming up on time here. Does anybody else have any questions?
While you wait for a hand to pop, actually
Yeah.
wanted to make a comment about what he said about maybe ordinals isn't his thing, but he's not antagonistic towards it. There's a lot of people out there that share that kind of belief and they think it's an abnormality. No, that's called being a Bitcoiner. You embrace the permissionless nature. You're all about it. Like, I don't need somebody to like all the same things I like, just like I don't need to like what they like. Instead, it's important that we understand that everybody has their own needs from Bitcoin. And as long as we can meet those needs while staying in consensus, or within the rules of consensus, I'm all about it. Build whatever you want, do whatever you want. I'll be here supporting that.
Yeah, experiment. That's experimentation is the only way to future proof something, in my opinion. All right, experimentation, innovation. Excellent, excellent. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Cypher, for joining us. Again, this show is brought to you by the Bitcoin Startup Lab. We help you turn your idea into an investment-worthy startup on Bitcoin. And we're doing this, the Bitcoin Olympics Hackathon, as a charity event. Again, we don't take any fees for the marketing or for the operations. All the speakers here are volunteers. So is the prizes from the prize sponsors to the winners are completely 100% undiluted. So all we ask is that if you join up, hit the repost button, right? Bring on more people. This is an event for people to come together around Bitcoin and innovate some really cool stuff. So come one, come all, welcome. You can sign up at BTC Startup Lab. And thank you guys. You guys are joining from Luxor. Do you guys want to do a shout out for Luxor mining today?
Yeah, Luxor, if you've only kind of discovered the company through ordinals, through like the Taproot Wizard block, we are one of the premier mining companies. We do kind of all mining tech and a broad mining tech stack, from ASIC procurement and brokerage to hash rate derivatives to a very killer market research desk on hashrateindex.com. So Cypher and I represent a little kind of corner of the company focusing on ordinals and ordinals development. And like the Luxor social media and the Ordinal Hub social media. And I think there'll be some interesting, we have some interesting products and deal announcements coming soon. So yeah, keep Luxor on your radar. 7th largest Bitcoin mining pool, 2nd or 3rd largest in North America. And I think it'll be a name you'll want to know if you are just joining Bitcoin for the first time. So thank you all for joining. Thank you, Albert.
Yeah. I don't know, Charlie. That sounds like a bunch of corporate speak to me.
Look, I've been independent for like a decade. Now I work for Luxor. I've been on the outside, now I'm on the inside. I don't have a sheet. I don't have one page. Yeah.
Instead, let me say what people actually care about, which is what benefits them. If you're looking to potentially get into mining, like a lot of us who were, maybe fading mining before inscriptions and ordinals, RFQ is dope. The ability to just go buy used miners from other people at a pretty steep discount, in my opinion.
Yeah. Luxor.tech, click on RFQ, buy an ASIC.
I assume everybody in here knows how to use Google. That was my assumption. And then honestly, the people we have as analysts over on the hash price stuff is insane. Like I don't think I've seen data that intriguing. I can't wait till we can get some ordinals data included in hash price index, because it's gonna be very interesting to see how all the numbers actually look once we can see them as bright shiny graphs.
I think that's a good place to end it. We're on time now, and guys, if you join the hackathon, Charlie and Cypher will be back for some office hours. So this is not the end of it. This is just the beginning of the hackathon. In fact, we're not even accepting code until August 26th, anyhow. So this is like the prelude. Thank you guys for helping kick it off. And see you guys in a few days. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Always great to talk to you, Albert.
You too, guys. Thanks for all the inspirations and insights. I really hope some of these things are going to get built. Thanks, guys. Checking out. and I'm signing off on the there we go. All right.